Nation, I'm Melody. Welcome to Author Nation. This is your go-to place for everything you need to be a nonfiction author, everything from planning to promotion, everything in between. And today I'm interviewing an author, Pattie Shales Lefkos. And she is a Canadian writer and journalist, and her Himalayan adventure travel memoir, Nepal One Day at a Time, celebrates her creative nonfiction debut. Pattie's articles have appeared in so many places: the Globe and Mail, the San Francisco Chronicle, Maclean's, Travel Life, Canadian Life, and Okanagan Life. And when not traveling or writing, Pattie loves to ski at her home winter base at Silver Star Mountain Resort in British Columbia and paddle and row in summer at her Ontario Island cottage. To me, this sounds like an idyllic life, Pattie. Tell me more about it.
Well, it is. Sometimes I feel I should apologize for where I live. We're very lucky. I grew up in Toronto, so that's the Ontario side, in a suburb of Toronto, Weston. And then I went to University of Toronto and Toronto Teachers College. And I was a teacher for 6 years in Toronto. And part of that upbringing, there were things that influenced me in my early background. In grade 10, I read Lost Horizon, James Hilton's story of finding Shangri-La. That always, for some reason, resonated with me. At the age of 10, my grandfather left me $100 when he died. And my parents said, buy something that will help you remember him. And so I bought a typewriter and declared that I would be a writer.
Wow.
But I didn't get to it for quite a while. And then I was lucky enough in grade 13, when it still existed in Ontario, to go to Neuchâtel Junior College in Switzerland. And that really cemented my love of the mountains. Yeah. So after 6 years, then I saw the light, as I like to say, and moved west to Vancouver in 1975. And then I had 31 years teaching as a teacher, consultant, and principal. And then when I retired in 2005, I remembered what I'd said at age 10. And so I signed up for Langara Journalism School and went there for a year before we moved up to Silver Star.
Wow. So writing has taken center stage in your life, like all your life, but you also had another career, teaching. So you have this kind of dual teaching and writing journalism. But you didn't go into journalism right off the bat. You went into teaching.
Yes. You know what? At that time, Ryerson was a college, not a university. They had a 1 or a 2 year journalism course. And I remember my parents saying, well, why don't you get a degree? And then after that, decide. Right. And then I, by that time, was interested in teaching, and I don't regret it. I had the most amazing career in education, mostly in inner city Vancouver, where you made a difference every day. It was fascinating and wonderful work. But I'd had enough. So at age 60, that's when I signed up for journalism school, finally.
Right. And did you teach writing in school?
No, not necessarily. A little bit.
Okay. I just thought I'd see. Yeah.
No, the first thing I did was write newsletters, frankly, and staff bulletins.
Well, there's some writing practice.
Well, the first thing I actually sent the year before I retired was an article for the British Columbia Principals Association for their newsletter. And I was scared to send it off. And of course, it was fine. They really loved it and asked for 2 more. But that was, I just didn't know what I was doing, really. I didn't think I did.
Right. And isn't that the case? We never quite know what we're doing until we do it, right? Mm-hmm. And then you went to journalism school, and then you started traveling. Was the idea to travel and write articles? Was that the idea?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I loved, along the way, I married a fellow teacher who was also a mountain guide. And so we ended up doing lots of adventure trips in North America. And then when we retired, we started doing international trips and writing articles. My first article was actually, I was a foreign correspondent, I like to think, because I sent stories back from a Yukon River paddling trip. We took 8 teenagers and paddled the Yukon River. My husband's school did it. So that was my first international foreign correspondent work. And then we started doing the other trips and writing about them.
That's amazing. So when you left Canada for Nepal, was that to write a series of articles, or was that just a trip you wanted to take? Like, how did that happen?
Well, first of all, we went to England for the first backpacking trip to do the west half of the coast to coast, because I'd never backpacked more than 3 days in a row. And that worked out really well. So then we took a big leap and went to Tibet and did a high altitude 3-day trek that topped out at 18,600 feet. So that was my first time at altitude. And then we thought, well, we wanted to volunteer, but you can't really volunteer because of the Chinese government in Tibet. So we thought we'll go to Nepal, and it just blossomed into a 3-month trip of a lot of treks. And then at the end of that, we were to go back, plan to go back and do some volunteering. But before we went, my husband ruptured his Achilles tendon. And so it was, I thought, I'm 67 at that point. If I don't go now, I might never go. So I went by myself. And the idea was to volunteer, teach, and write articles. I had no idea of a book at that time.
So you went over to Nepal on your own at 67 to backpack and volunteer and write articles, and somehow that turned into a book. How did that happen?
Well, when I came home, I wrote a few articles, and I'd done a lot of magazine and newspaper work by then, and I really wanted to elevate my writing. So I signed on for the University of BC Booming Ground program, where MFA students mentor people, and they make a bit of money that way. And so I started writing articles and getting them critiqued a lot more and trying to make them, a little bit better. And then they just kind of started to get together into a book. At the time, we were thinking about starting a nonprofit and building a school. It just all came together.
Wow, that's amazing. So tell me a little bit more about the book and, what it's about. So is it about your journey? Is it about the people you met along the way? So tell me a little bit more about that.
It's really all of the above. So there's kind of 2 sections in the book. The first is about my stint volunteering in a remote village in the Gorkha area where the earthquake happened. That was the epicenter of the earthquake a year after I was there. So it's about the volunteer section. It's also about trekking at altitude and that area called Upper Mustang, which is a restricted area. So it's only been open for 20 years. I originally wanted to write about the changes that tourism had brought. Mm-hmm. So it's those 2 sections. It's also, so that's kind of the exterior, but the interior journey of what happened to me, first of all, getting up the nerve to go by myself, and then to all the things I discovered about myself. And why did I discover those things? Because of the people I met and being open to new experiences, really. So it was the people along the way that changed me. Because after my volunteering stint, I went to another village, and I was the first foreigner to visit, and they asked for my help in building a school. And interior-wise, I left feeling like an imposter. But the people I met in my month-long trekking part of the journey encouraged me to go ahead and do something about it. So yeah, it's a combination of a lot of things.
That's amazing. I'm just going to read a little bit of a review that I was reading some reviews online, and here's just a little snippet from a review. It says, I thoroughly enjoyed trekking along with Patty through her story. The culture and people came alive along with remote places to which I may never travel. What a journey. And what a gift she gave and continues to give to the children and communities of Nepal through her efforts. Wow, I love that. Like, that's an exciting book. I want to read that. From your perspective, what is the promise that you are making to readers when they pick up your book?
Well, all people, probably women, but all people, I really hope they'll be inspired to step out of their comfort zone. It's not always comfortable, but the rewards are absolutely endless. So it's inspiring them to take a chance and to do something different and to make a difference, that's possible. And also to, discover a new place and a new culture, go trekking, see what it's like. And realize that one person can make a difference. So, and also to follow your goals. Well, as a travel writer, as a whatever you want to be, if you take those steps, and the book is called Nepal One Day at a Time, and frankly, that's how I live my life, one day at a time. I try to do something different or new every day to make a difference, or better writing, promote the book, marketing, one thing at a time. So hopefully that will inspire others to do those things.
That's amazing. You talked about changes, this experience changed you. So can you talk a little bit about, how did the experience of writing this book and doing this trip change you?
Well, the trip in particular made me realize that I had enough courage to do that. That, yes, I made it through past all of my fears and came back totally unscathed. I think I was sick one day in 2.5 months. That was one of my biggest fears, that I'd get really sick. I was not. I was absolutely fine. Gave me a lot more confidence and self-assurance as a person and an athlete, an outdoor person, a trekker. And the people really inspired me to share their story. I learned a lot about myself through them. And in many ways, it made me a much stronger partner in my marriage. I've been married for 40 years. We have a great relationship. We always do things together, except for this one time when Barry was injured. And one of the things that the whole experience of writing the book changed me is that now I have the confidence and determination to go ahead and write another book. Because with the first book, I completed it, many drafts, and then I gave it to an editor that I know, because I thought if it's a piece of garbage, I'll throw it away. I don't know if it's any good. And she came back with, I think it's highly publishable, and some advice. But then I could go ahead. And now I know from that experience and from the confidence gained in my trip that I can go ahead and write another book or two. I have a couple planned, so.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And from there, I'd really like to talk a little bit about, writing travel memoirs. So you came from a background of journalism. You went to journalism school, and there are certain, skill sets that you learn in journalism school. How did that help you write a travel memoir? And what's some of the advice that you'd give to somebody else who wants to write travel memoirs?
First of all, I learned how to interview people well and prepare for interviews, and how to listen and wait long enough for the right information. There's this wonderful question that people interviewing me used to do when I was a principal, and they would always say at the very end, and is there anything else you'd like to say? And you get the best quotes with that. So I learned those skills. I learned how to take really detailed notes. My journals were, I'd spend an hour at least a day writing my journal. And I learned how to focus too, to not be too broad in my concepts, to really focus on small incidents, certain people, small scenes that mean something. So not just a travel log kind of thing, but a memoir has a lot more of that into it. And advice too is to establish a good relationship with editors. If you get an article in one magazine or newspaper, keep it going, offer more. And once you've established a good relationship, you're much more likely to get your pitches accepted. So that really helped as well. I learned also that quotes really make a piece. You can't just have description. You've got to have the dialogue and the quotes. That makes it comes alive. So that helped.
Yeah. So you took meticulous notes while you were away. It wasn't something where you did the trip and then you came back and you tried to remember it. While you were away, you had a journal or something with you that you used to write meticulous notes every single day. You interviewed the people you met along the way, spent time with them, got to know them, journaled about them. Did you write down the interviews?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
So
I had a section, and I had my journal book, and I did a lot of prep beforehand too, studying the maps and knowing the names of the places, learning a little bit of vocabulary, which makes people feel comfortable that you're making an effort. And it's a lot of fun. I love languages. So a lot of prep beforehand as well. And then I had a separate book for interviews where I would write out my questions the night before I was going to interview somebody. Yeah. And then, so that was all separate. And actually, my guide drew a map for me of the village where I was into, and that's in the front of the book. So there's a lot of little things like that. I've used a book called Writing Away. It's by Lavinia Spalding, and it's about journaling while you're traveling. And it kind of points out the incidents and the people that what's the one thing that happened today, or the most interesting person and why, not just general stuff. So that really helped.
Yeah, I will find that book and I will link it in the description for people who are interested. Thank you for that. That's a great tip. So if you want to write a travel memoir, do the planning ahead of time, plan the trip. You had a guide. I'm assuming that person might have done some translating for you as well.
Yes, yeah. His English is very good. I asked he was actually the guide my husband and I had for our 3.5-month trip together. So I felt totally comfortable with him. We had a lot of fun. He was very supportive and understanding, and I trusted him completely. So, and I knew his English was pretty good. I'd asked for that the first time because I wanted to write articles the first time as well.
Yeah.
The other bit of advice, I think, for travel writers, I've attended, and I'm sorry it's not in Canada, but I've attended the Book Passage Travel Writer and Photographer Conference out of San Francisco in Marin 3 times. That was an incredible resource. It's been going for 25 years. The head fellow, Don George, is a writer, now an editor-at-large for National Geographic. I got my gig at the San Francisco Chronicle. I wrote 20 articles for them because I attended the workshop of the travel editor. And I made really good connections, as well as meeting a lot, learning a lot too.
That's amazing. I'll put that in the description as well. We have not just Canadian, but we have American, we have authors from all over watching this. So I will add that to the description as well. So have we missed any big advice for travel writers? Have I missed anything at all?
I guess with a book, because I self-published, I sent out and got some no returns, some very nice returns. And then right when I was starting to self-publish, I got the best return, but this company said they'll do 4 books this year, and yours, unfortunately, was number 5 choice. So,
yes.
Anyhow,
don't give up.
Yeah,
don't give up.
I got really good advice from one of my former editors. She just said, give yourself a deadline.
Yes.
I waited 1 year. I didn't get it because she said even the most prominent authors sometimes will get accepted by a publishing company, and then they'll have to be put off for a year or 2, and particularly now with COVID. So I just went ahead.
Yes.
And I also got really good advice about not going with some of the vanity publishers that give you big packages.
Yes.
At a writing conference in Salmon Arm, I met an agent who just said, you need a good cover, good book designer, and a good editor.
Yes.
Now, I mean, it was hard. I did all the other work myself, but it paid off. I have control, and I did not spend money needlessly. So.
Brilliant. That's excellent advice. And I know you just said you had at least a couple more books in you, so I'm very excited to be keeping track of your author career and seeing what your next book will be. In the meantime, do you have an excerpt that you would read from your book?
Sure.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Speaking of a cover, here's the cover of Nepal One Day at a Time. And the cover is a photo that I took. Luckily, now there's something I learned at journalism school. Take a horizontal and a vertical of every photo. I never thought about it for a book cover or anything. The horizontal doesn't work. The vertical does. And on the back, you can see us up in the Himalaya. Myself, my guide, and a couple of porters. Yeah. Anyhow, yes, and all the Post-it notes, that's because I do readings of different lengths. So I have them set in there knowing how much it'll be. So this is from This is from the prologue, a little short reading. In Upper Mustang, June the 2nd, 2014. So what's up for today? I asked my guide, Raj, requesting his usual blow-by-blow of the day's trek. We'd been teaching, trekking, and conducting interviews together in remote areas of Nepal for more than 2 months. Over steaming cups of coffee, cooled with fresh goat milk, we sat side by side in the drafty Sangboche village guesthouse kitchen, planning the day ahead. I was tired. He seemed upbeat, ready for adventure. When I had whined about fatigue after an especially long and arduous trekking day, he had threatened to hire a jeep. Instead, knowing I wouldn't take it, he rewarded me with a half-day's respite, an afternoon to curl up and read after a short morning hike. But now he was upping the ante, suggesting an alternate route. Do you want to go and try the trail through the canyon to visit the Chungsi Rangshung Cave Monastery, he asked. Monks from Gilling Village discovered it only about 30 years ago. I'd never been much of a risk taker. Is it longer and harder than the normal route back to Samar village? A bit longer, I think. I've never gone that way. He hesitated. There is one extremely steep part. Is the trail really narrow? The image of a friend from home flashed across my consciousness. A friend whose one step near the edge of a narrow, rugged trail in Portugal had resulted in a horrific accident. Our heads almost touched as we leaned over the map in the smoky kitchen. Raj traced the route described to him by the man of the house. It was time to step out of my comfort zone, to take a risk. What better place than on a desolate plateau high in the remote Himalaya? Unlikely to return to the area and eager to research stories worthy of publication in newspapers and magazines, I agreed to the alternate path. Hejur, you convinced me, I said, using one of my newly acquired Nepali words, roughly translated as okay. I smiled bravely, masking my trepidation of yet another high pass to climb, a rarely traveled unmarked route to find, and a hidden cave monastery to search for. Excited, but apprehensive, I shouldered my pack and followed Raj out of the guest house.
Oh, thank you. That's beautiful. Love it. Pattie, I have two questions. One, how heavy was that pack?
About 20, 25 pounds, I guess.
Oh, that's not so bad.
Yeah, because we had a porter.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not
You have to carry two full 1 liter bottles of water at altitude at all times. So, and then all of the stuff, some people let the porters carry important things they shouldn't. I had stuff with me other than my sleeping bag, which was in the porter bag, in my duffel bag. I had a down jacket, I had rain gear, wind gear, extra chocolate.
No, of course. First aid kit, chocolate.
my passport, my camera, things I couldn't part with. Safety things and things I couldn't part with, always on my person.
That makes sense. Yeah, when I backpack, my pack's very heavy, so I was just really curious how heavy yours was. And my second question is, where can we buy your book?
Well, if you go to my website, which is www.pattieshaleslefkos.com, you can contact me through that, and we'll figure out how to get it to you. That is the best way, because all profits for this book support education in the villages I was in. Mm-hmm. Now, it's easier to buy on Amazon, and you can do that, and that's wonderful. And it's also on an ebook and Kobo and Amazon. But if you are concerned that all of the money goes to the nonprofit, and, then it's easy to get it from me, and I can mail it anywhere in Canada. Outside of Canada, probably better to go by Amazon.
Yeah, perfect. I will put all of that information in the description for people who are interested in buying the book. And remember, buying the book supports Pattie's nonprofit, right? It's a nonprofit.
Yes, it's a nonprofit, and it also is called Nepal One Day at a Time. Yes. And in that nonprofit so far, we've built an 8-room schoolhouse with 2 toilet blocks, and we're working on almost fundraised enough for 2 homes in the village, because that school and every home in the village were ruined because that village was near the epicenter of the 2015 earthquake.
Yeah.
So very few homes have been redone.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today, your efforts in Nepal, and your adventures. Thank you so much, Pattie, for joining us.
Thank you. It was great talking to you.
Excellent. Good. Thank you.